Hello and welcome to The Stack. For this week's show, I speak with Rob Orchard from the always delightful Delayed Gratification magazine. He tells me all about their new book, Misc. Plus, Divya Tani, Global Editorial Director for Condé Nast Traveller, tells me about their expansion to Germany. Enjoy the show. From Itory House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show with a great visit by Rob Orchard from Delayed Gratification magazine. The title is well known among Stack listeners as an in-depth revisit of the events of the last 3 months. They just published a new book called Misc, a compendium of delightfully random facts, in the busiest week in the UK for book releases, known as Super Thursday. Rob also brought chocolate. You understand why? Listen in. Rob Orchard, welcome back to The Stack. Always a pleasure seeing you. You're always like upbeat. I like that.
It's so nice to see you, Fernando. Thank you very much for having me again. I really appreciate it.
And this week is a special date. It's a release of your new book. And by the way, before we talk about Misc, it's actually Super Thursday and I didn't realize. So you are part of this, it's the most popular week for books buying here in the UK.
Yes. I find almost every aspect of the book publishing industry to be very, very strange indeed. And I don't understand why the book publishers decide to launch there's 1,900 books. I can't even imagine what you would write 1,900 books about. 450 of them are hardbacks, and they're all being released on this one day. So, by definition, the vast majority of them will absolutely sink without a trace, despite the fact that presumably they've been written by authors who've toiled and sweated over them and, written away by guttering candlelight until late at night. And, they're just going to sink. They're going to sell 2 copies to that person and their mum, and then it's going to go. So Super Thursday is here. Boris Johnson's going to do very well out of it. And Boris Johnson doesn't need to do well out of it because he's done very well out of everything so far since he left office. And then certain big ones will do really, really well. And then there's sort of scrappy, smaller ones like us that are trying to make a play for it on Super Thursday, yeah.
I'd rather read Misc than Boris Johnson autobiography.
That is ever so nice of you to say.
Yes.
So I'd rather read Misc than Boris Johnson's, Unleashed as well. Yes, that's true. And we've been so it's interesting. So I spent today going around bookshops in London, which has been lovely. Everybody's been very, very nice. Booksellers are some of the best people ever. And I've been going around with a book, telling people about it, and in a lot of places it's already on sale, which is great, and in a few places it's by the till, which is brilliant, and I've been giving out special bribery chocolate. So
that always works.
Do you know what? Bribery chocolate is a very cost-effective way of marketing, because you can take out big adverts, but they cost lots and lots of money. Or you can go to individual booksellers and give them beautiful branded bars of Tony's Chocolonely chocolate. They love it. And actually, it was so funny because, I sort of go up and speak to people and say, oh, this is the book, and I'm doing it. They're like, oh, yeah, fine, that's good. Yeah, oh, it looks quite nice, yeah. And then I'd say, and I bought some bribery chocolate, and their eyes would open wide, and I'd be like, I've got you. This is fantastic. I'm now going to be the man who brought you chocolate. So
it's going to be, it's going to be prioritized over Boris Johnson for sure. Just because of
so.
the chocolate.
Exactly. I think I should apply this to all marketing that I do in the future. It's all chocolate from now on.
But Rob, I flicked through Misc, another fantastic book from Delayed Gratification, and I feel this is a book, it's almost like a gift for all those fans, for your loyal readers, because it's fantastic, it's fun, it's quite snappy, right? It's tell us more about the idea, because even the format is kind of small, you can carry with you.
Yep. So you're exactly right. So you picked up on the fact that it's quite a joyful book. And so in Delayed Gratification, our magazine, we just cover a lot of very depressing topics. We try to do lots of funny and interesting stuff as well. But we, of necessity, because it's a magazine about what happens in the world, a lot of it is quite sad, because the world is a terrifying and unstable place. And we try to sort of make it more understandable for our readers. But also, with our new book, with Misc, I just wanted to do something that wasn't at all upsetting. I just wanted to do something that really made people laugh and kind of, gave them a load of interesting facts that they could tell people at the pub and at dinner tables and stuff like that. So I started looking at all of the research that we'd done for the magazine for the last 13 years, including loads that hadn't been published, because we do loads and loads of research that just doesn't quite kind of work out, for infographics and for stories and so on, and started putting it together. And I was like, I think there might be the kernel of something really fun here. So when I was just graduating, so years and years and years ago now, I loved Shots Miscellany. It was a real publishing phenomenon. Ben Schott brought out this brilliant book, Shots Miscellany. And I wanted to do, I thought, like a miscellany is actually a really nice way of bringing together super, super disparate facts in a very kind of nice format where it all kind of coheres together. And so I started working on this. And I think the other thing that was motivating me was our first book, An Answer for Everything, was great, but also it was very big and it's very colourful. And so it took a really long time to do reprints and it was quite expensive and people didn't quite know where to put it. And it would be very difficult to do more than one every 10 years because it was such a labour of love and so intense and so many pages. And I just wanted to make something that conceivably, if it goes well this year, I could do one every year because I'm really interested in sort of expanding the reach of the brand. And I'm sort of hoping that Misc, as it's sort of a very jolly, light-hearted thing, might do well at Christmas in particular. And it might act as a sort of a gateway drug for introducing people to the magazine. So almost like a kind of an outreach program for the magazine. Hopefully it'll sit in a lot of toilets, making a lot of people laugh. And then they'll turn to the back page and say, oh, these guys do a magazine as well. This is my hope anyway.
This could be your new annual, basically.
It could be a new annual. Yeah, so I look at people doing kind of, really interesting annuals. Private Eye has always done an annual. And they always sell tons of copies. It's incredibly popular and successful, as it should be. It's great. And the Guinness Book of Records does this annual. They're always in the bestseller lists. So I wouldn't ever sort of expect to get anywhere near those, but just something that you can build on each year. So you're not trying to sell a new concept each year. You're just building on kind of what went before, and hopefully you kind of carry people from the last year with you, is the idea.
Rob, as you said, the book is very jolly, but one thing, there's so many facts in there. I wonder, what's the process of fact-checking even for the magazine, Delayed Gratification as well? Because, there's so much involved. I mean, so much work, hours in a way.
Yeah.
And there's so many facts, from the most beautiful beaches in the world to the cinema box office. It's difficult.
Yes, it is. So there's a colossal fact-checking process and we really tie ourselves in knots with it. And we put a disclaimer at the end that there's definitely going to be errors in there. But I think one thing that you learn pulling together a book of trivia and facts is also that nobody really knows anything. So you can kind of go out to the very best, most credible sources on, a million and one things around the world. And quite often they don't cohere with the second best sources and so on. So a lot of the things that we do, we're trying almost to sort of find our own facts. So for example, you sort of mentioned the best beaches in the world. So we do a series of things where we look at the best beaches, we look at the best ever Glastonbury sets, we look at the best video games of all time. And actually all we're doing there is pulling together sort of a meta list. So we find, for example, 25 lists about the books you should read before you die, because people quite often do those from 25 credible sources. And then we crunch those numbers down and we give them weighted scores. And then we work out overall what the kind of the best books in the world are. And that's quite a satisfying thing to do. So we do lots of finding our own stuff. But yes, fact-checking takes absolutely forever, and there's always a moment where you think, oh goodness, I'm not quite sure that we got that quite right. It came to me with our first one, with An Answer for Everything, where we had pulled this book together during the pandemic. I was also moving house at the time. I had 3 very young children, including a baby. Everything was just insane. We'd bitten off way more than we can chew. We were working away. Our poor art director, who carries most of the weight for the book on his shoulders, was, kind of slowly going mad, trying to move all this gigantic data sets around the place and so on. We finished it. And I remember the sense of relief, this weight off my shoulders. Oh my God, it's so absolutely wonderful. It's fantastic. And then I went away with my in-laws and we went to the Lake District. On the first night I was there, and this is going to sound very strange, but I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law, who's lovely. And he mentioned something about racehorses. And I said, oh, I've got a really interesting fact about racehorses, which is, about the cost per litre of their semen. Wow. Because you can buy racehorse semen for, fertilization and so on. And how that compares to things like printer's ink and incredibly old whiskey and things like that. And then he said, oh, yeah. And he made some kind of point which made me realise that we'd made a really bad mistake about racehorse semen. And I went away and I remember trying to check in my room on terrible reception, because it was the Lake District, facts about racehorse semen, and then texting our sub-editor and saying, did he think that we were going to get sued about racehorse semen? And thinking, God, this is terrible. And there were several other things like that unravelled afterwards. So there's always going to be something. But yeah, we try our hardest to be correct.
I mean, those details matter sometimes.
They do, yeah.
Look at, for example, I opened page 40 of the book,
yes.
The Geography of Atheism in the UK.
Yes.
I mean, what a fantastic graph. And know what? I've been missing more graphs in the dailies
Right.
when I read here in the UK. Sometimes you read a story, but there's not enough numbers, so you can't really, okay, what's really going on? I think, like, for example, I know it's fun, you know, frivolous at times, but it's amazing. This is very important,
Well,
actually.
We pride ourselves, I guess, on our design, and we're very, very lucky because we're blessed with the best art director that I've ever worked with, Christian, who's my co-author on this, and he just has a knack of, so he created an entirely new aesthetic for this book. It's more stripped back, it's simpler, it's black and white. We agreed the book had to be black and white to make it make sense so that we could keep it at a lower price point and so on. But he has this knack of just putting out something devastatingly beautiful and simple. So I love this as well, like the geography of atheism. So we just got this data about per capita levels of self-declared levels of belief in England and Wales. And I love it because you find out that sort of the place with the highest level of believers, with the fewest non-believers, so consequently the most divine place in England and Wales, is Slough. Seems incredibly unlikely.
Divine Slough.
Exactly, lovely divine Slough. Go there, it's a terribly holy place. And the most damned place, so the place with the fewest people who believe in organised religion, is Caerphilly. And it's so nice to see that, because actually you can see as well, you put it on a map and you can see that there's this immediate pattern that's sort of going on there. And I think probably realistically, it is a pattern that relates in some level to levels of immigration. Because actually what you have is you have a swathe of believers in the post-industrialised towns, particularly of the Midlands and the North, which have seen relatively high levels of immigration. And then you have this swathe of non-believers in Wales and the south of England and out to the east, which have seen relatively low levels. And I think there must be something about their kind of people coming in who come from cultures which have, you know, kind of much more fervent religious belief, something like that going on. But I love that, and I love, you know,
I love the interpretation we can, you know.
This is the thing,
yes.
you know, is hopefully it's the starting point for a lot of conversations where you can say, oh, why is that? What's going on behind that?
Also, thank you for doing an index. I think that's a fun.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yes.
maybe you want to say, oh, maybe is there anything about entomology or espresso martinis? Don't worry. Just, you know, just look at the index, you know?
The index is fun. The index is, so I did it on our first book, An Answer for Everything. And I remember we were out in Margate, me and Christian and Marcus working on it. And I said to them, do you know what? I think I'm just going to bang out the index this afternoon. And they said, what, in an afternoon? And I said, yeah, it's not a problem at all. And about 4.5 days later, I still hadn't finished. And it was this.
Still letter E.
But I think it's probably my magnum opus. You know, I think it's probably the best thing that I've ever done is doing this index, because it's so fun and it's so complicated and you lose yourself in it so much. And yes, this one I tried to make a little bit more manageable. So this one's only 8 pages rather than 16. But still, it gives you an opportunity, I think, to kind of play some more jokes and put some more Easter eggs in there.
And Rob, there's a new issue coming out
this
coming week. So very exciting. We might have a little preview here. Tell us what's going on with the delayed gratification world as well. I mean, you've been 14 years already,
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's doing very well still.
So we're still here. We're still fighting the good fight. I'm really excited by the magazine. We did something last issue, so issue 55, which was long overdue and made such a difference, which was we did a huge redesign and we combined it with moving to different paper stock. And for years, we had been on this uncoated stock and we sort of fell in love with it early on because it's got that lovely tactility. You know, it feels very different from kind of gloss stock. But the problem with it always is that ink just sort of sits on it and it takes about 4 days for it to dry. So actually it tends to go kind of a bit murky. And we counteracted that for several years by using a printer that had an HUV machine. So that means that the paper comes off and it's dried instantly, and then you get much better. So you get the tactility and you get the reproduction. Amazing. But then that printer went out of business overnight. So we moved to another printer, Park, and we were printing with them and it weren't quite getting the reproduction that we wanted. And then we went to talk to them and they're actually brilliant. They've given us loads of advice. So they've helped us to make the magazine kind of open up more fully. So they changed the grain of paper that we use. That gave us that, which meant that we could use the space better. And then they also said, well, look, you could use this paper. So we tried loads of different things. And I'm so pleased with the result because it's so clear. Like the reproduction's amazing. It's bold and it's vibrant. And then we kind of combined that with a big redesign, which was lovely. So we now have a culture section, which we've never had before, but looking back over 3 months of culture and trying to use data to pick out what the very best stuff is. We have a new almanac section at the beginning, which enables us to really delve into some of the smaller and quirkier stories. We have a new briefing section where we try to try to explain something incredibly complicated in 2 pages in a way that means that you can just read it and go, and all sorts of other lovely things like that. So that's good. And then our new issue's coming out on Thursday. It's going to go out to subscribers on Thursday, the 17th of October. I think it's a good one. I think it's. I always
the
think
cover is beautiful.
The cover's nice, isn't it?
Tell me about the cover.
Oh yeah, so
Tell me about the cover.
The cover is by an American artist, and he uses traditional Japanese woodblock techniques. And this man has untold patience, just incredible, because basically it takes months and months and months to make a single artwork. You have to build it up one block at a time. But he's got this beautiful, beautiful sort of Japanese style print that we've got for the cover. And yeah, so I'm really excited. I can't wait to see how it comes out. I think it worked really, really well with the quality of the stock. And we've got some big stories. So we've got an extraordinary story from our associate editor, James Montague. He's a very good sports writer, just talking about Saudi sports washing, particularly in the context of boxing. And this incredible way that Saudi Arabia has effectively kind of cornered the sports market in all sorts of disciplines, including boxing, just in the space of a few years, has just completely taken over. And how this relates to the suppression of civil rights within the Kingdom Saudi Arabia itself. It's a really good read. And then we've got an amazing story from our editor-at-large, Harriet Salem, just talking all about foreign fighters and foreign volunteers who've gone to Ukraine since 2014 and the incredibly high price that some of them have paid. So there's this extraordinary bit about Peter Fouché, who was a taxi driver in London, and who just in 2022 said, look, I've got to go and help. So he volunteered as combat medic on the front line, despite having a family here in England. And he went over and he helped, he saved the lives of probably 200 Ukrainians, by all accounts, sometimes under unbelievably kind of difficult circumstances, like racing along in ambulances, treating people in the back where there's mortar and shell fire coming in. And just talking about his motivations, and very sadly he died this year, but the way that his life has been an inspiration to others. So we've got a couple of kind of really meaty
light and shades.
Features. Yeah, some light. There is some light shade.
Talk about light. You have 6 pages of Taylor Swift Eras Tour graphics.
This is true. Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, we wanted to do something on Taylor Swift because I'm sure that you experienced the same thing. I'm not somebody who kind of particularly knows her music well. I like it, but I'm not a Swiftie by any means. But I realised that there was this extraordinary range of people that were absolutely obsessed by her, from my 15-year-old niece right up to, a pair of GPs who are friends of mine where I live, in their 40s. I was like, what's going on? What is this cultural phenomenon that is uniting these people? And then these people going off, paying hundreds of pounds to go to a concert in Edinburgh, and then paying hundreds of pounds to go to the same concert in London. And, this breaking this barrier of $1 billion of revenue for a tour, and, affecting the inflation rates of entire nations and things like that. So what's going on? So we try to get the data, and it's always great. So my co-editor Marcus is great at this. He dived into the data and he found some beautiful data sets, including at the first Wembley concert of the tour, a seismology unit of university in London had measured the tremors of the ground as the people were kind of stomping and shouting and dancing at the concert. And so we've mapped that against the songs that were being played, against the changes of costume that were happening, and all of the kind of the different parts of the concert that are going on. So you've just got this beautiful 2-page snapshot of this concert and exactly how it kind of like spiraled out about the place. She's a phenomenon, that lady, and the data that goes with her is amazing.
Thank you as always, Rob. The new issue of Delayed Gratification will be out this week, and their book, Misc, is out now. And now let's talk travel with Divya Tani, Global Editorial Director for Condé Nast Traveller. The Reader's Choice Awards issue is just out, and also the title is expanding to Germany. Plenty to get excited. Here is Divya with more.
As you know, we launched the Middle East edition last year, which was very exciting. And just a few weeks ago, we launched Condé Nast Traveller in Germany. We launched the website a few months ago, and then we brought out the first print edition just this past month. And we have an incredible team based in Germany, a wonderful, wonderful editor called Dennis Bratz. And he has been really, really wonderful because, as you know, launching a new title in a new market these days is not something you hear of all the time. So this was really exciting for us. And he's been really incredible at bringing this great group of people together and putting out a product that we are all so, so proud of, and really very, very customized for the German market. As many of you and your listeners know, Germany is a tremendously important travel market in the world. It's the third largest travel market on the planet. So usually when we go into a new market, people always ask us, oh, why are you going here? But when we said it's Germany, everyone was like, why haven't you guys been there for all of these years? It's been a totally different reaction. The German traveler is so sophisticated. It's a very well-developed world of travel there. As you know, Germans love traveling. They're very active travelers. So they really enjoy things like sports. They really, really enjoy wellness. That's a huge trend that we're seeing globally. But in Germany, they've always been very invested in traveling for their health and wellness. They really enjoy traveling abroad. They really enjoy going to Asia. Beaches are a big thing for them as well. Places like the Maldives, like Bali, very, very high up on their radar. Mallorca, of course, everybody knows how much the Germans love Mallorca, but we're seeing them really travel very extensively, trying out new places. They're really adventurous travelers. So they're really very, very excited about going someplace. What they do love, Fernando, is research. So they really, really enjoy reading about destinations and really getting to a lot of information before they decide what exactly they want to do in that place. They're great readers. And it's such a treat as an editor to go into a market where people really, really love to read, and they really love print as well. So these are all great reasons for us to be there. We're really excited about this launch.
And I think it's a very good moment for the travel industry. Of course, finally we're leaving COVID behind. And one of the good things about Condé Nast Traveller, I was reading in the newer issue, there was a feature on Chad. I didn't know much about it. And I think that sense of discovery is quite important for Condé Nast Traveller, right?
Oh, absolutely. Our readers and our audience, they're people that really, really enjoy surprise and discovery, and they want to go to places that they're really first movers. If there's a new place, there's a new flight, there's a new hotel, they want to be there first. We always say that Condé Nast Traveller is the first to know and the first to go. That's really what they're all about. And, obviously a place like Chad is not for everybody. I haven't been there myself, I have to confess. But when you look at the imagery, and we had Alistair Taylor-Young, who's one of our favorite photographers in the world, I think he's one of my favorite, photographed the story. And it's just absolutely sensational. I mean, we didn't know these sort of sandstone pillars that you see and the rocks that have been, eroded over time by the water and the wind. And you see the dry lakes, and you just see this sort of landscape that is just extraordinary. You've never seen anything like it. And so I'm really thrilled because it also made the cover of both our US and UK issues, which is quite unusual. And it's such an unusual place. And I really love that. I love the chance to be able to tell the story of a place that not a lot of people know necessarily, and to put something on the radar for people. You may not go today, you may not go next year, but just the fact that it's on your radar for the first time, I think is something that's really gratifying and satisfying for all of us to do.
And I think I told you perhaps in the last time we spoke that I keep a kind of a series of travel cuttings from Condé Nast Traveller as well. So as you said, Chad might not happen this year or next year, but at some point we will certainly do. And I want to go back to the international editions thing as well, because I think there's something common, perhaps, with the Condé Nast Traveller reader. But I think it's really important when you're dealing with the readers from the Middle East and now from Germany, because they might want to have something catered for their market, right? There might be a different sensibility as well to travel, right?
Absolutely, 100%. You've hit the nail on the head, Fernando. It's so important for us to be thinking about local tastes and local preferences and nuances when we go into each market. It's really interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were in the Bahamas for ILTM North America, which is a big luxury travel trade show. And it was the first time that all 8 Condé Nast Traveller editors from around the world came to the same place and were under the same roof for the same period of time. It was the first time that that's ever happened. We have 8 editions across the world: the US, the UK, Spain, Italy, Germany, the Middle East, China, and India. So there's 8 of us now. And all 8 of us got together in the Bahamas, and we had a whole weekend to sort of, before the conference started, to do an offsite and really plan ahead for 2025. And, this is something that we do all the time. Usually we're doing it on Zoom, or a few of us are managing to get together, but not everyone. So it was really extraordinary to have everyone in the same room. But I think the biggest learning for me, Fernando, over these past few years of working globally with all of our editors across the world is that there's so much that since the pandemic, especially, travel has changed dramatically. And so what you're really finding is that amongst a certain kind of audience, a certain kind of traveler who we see as being the Condé Nast Traveller, there really is a lot more that we have in common than we thought originally. Especially since the pandemic. First of all, people are putting so much more importance on travel. There's so much more importance on experience over product, for example. People are really, even when things are difficult or volatile, they don't want to cut down on their next trip. They don't want to cut down on spending that time with their family and their friends. I think the pandemic really reinforced to people the importance of travel in their lives and making connections with people that they meet in these places, but also connections amongst our own families and friends that we want to now travel with. One of the biggest trends that we've seen since the pandemic has been multi-generational travel. So families traveling together, large extended families traveling together, from the grandparents to the little children. Everyone wants to be together and really spend that time together. Travel has really become this force of connection for people, and that's why they're prioritizing it more and more and more. And that's why I think we're seeing this amazing rush for travel that has not died down since the pandemic. We kept talking about revenge travel back then, but now it's not even revenge travel. I just call it traveling with a vengeance, because that's
I prefer that.
Absolutely. That's all people want to do, is they can't wait for the next trip, because it's giving them an opportunity to disconnect from the everyday and reconnect to the things that they value most in the world. So I think that has been something that is so universal in sentiment, that people are sort of looking for the same things. Because when you travel as a large family, for instance, you are looking to maybe travel for fewer days when everyone can make it, but you're really trying to go for the absolute best that you could go for. You're really looking at the best hotels that you could stay in. You're really looking at villas where you could all be together, but are more private. You could have a private chef who's there cooking for you. You could be going and doing these lovely trips to the local markets and picking up the produce yourselves, for instance. You could go and experience craft that's local. You're shopping for things that are all very local. You're staying away from sort of the big brand names that you know from back home, and you're really looking for something that's unusual and handcrafted maybe. So the sorts of things that we're seeing people really go for, these sort of culinary experiences, craft experiences, art and design experiences, events that they're building their trips around. All of these desires that are common amongst our readers across all of our markets. Now, are there certain things that are very localized that we have to keep in mind? 100% absolutely. So to give you an example, everybody wants to go to Italy, right? I think every market all over the world, we've seen just tourism in Italy explode in the past few years, as you know. Let's say everybody wants to go to Italy. But for instance, if we say, this is the villa that you need to stay in Puglia, our readers from the Middle East might say, look, this is great and it's beautiful, but it looks a bit isolated. And our audiences will still want to shop for Italian luxury products when they're there. So what's the closest place they can get to do that? Could you add that into the story? Or could we add something additional to give them that information? So we'll do that. Our Indian travelers, for example, they'll say, oh, this looks amazing, but, there's not enough vegetarian food in this region of Italy. So could you provide us with some information on where is the best place for them to access vegetarian food? So if you think about this, when we all sit together and we're discussing destinations and stories, cruises, and all of these exciting things that we all want to know about, we're also thinking at that particular moment in time, but what else is going to really make a difference to my reader in my country where I come from? What is that additional bit of information that they're going to need in order to convince them that this is a great idea for them? So that's the sort of thinking that we do right at the beginning, and that sort of finds its way into the strategy that we have for the rest of the year.
Divya, I'm very curious because, of course, you mentioned there Condé Nast Traveller India, because we're reading more and more about the rise of the Indian consumer, perhaps even the Indian reader as well, who might want to go where to go next for travel. I wonder if you can talk to us a bit more about that issue and how that market is incredibly exciting as well. We have Diwali coming up as well, so I wonder if you can tell me more about that.
Of course, it's one of my favorite subjects. So, so the Indian traveler, in fact, the Financial Times in London actually just did a story a couple of weeks ago on the Indian traveler. And the Indian traveler is now poised to be one of the biggest travel markets on the planet. It will be the fifth largest outbound travel market on the planet by 2027 and the third largest domestic market by 2027. So we're really talking about massive numbers of people spending an incredible amount of money on travel. And this is really, really interesting because we're seeing that in this market, their patterns of travel really have accelerated since the pandemic. This is a country where they've already reached 2019 levels of outbound travel and are just growing exponentially. It is a really interesting phenomenon for a lot of our hotel and our travel partners across the world, because today, all of a sudden, there is this rush and excitement to get the Indian traveler into the doors because they are high spenders. The things that really make Indian travelers, especially at the high end, really, really want to travel, number one is food. Culinary is a massive, massive desire for them. They are not, I don't say they, I say we are not people who have a good time if the food is not good. It's a really, really big draw for us.
Understandable.
And not just that, but like I mentioned before, sometimes vegetarian food is an issue. So that's something that, you do have to keep in mind when you are talking to Indian travelers. Another thing that's really interesting about Indian travelers, and this is a concept I don't know if you're familiar with, Fernando, I believe that you are, but destination weddings are very, very big for the Indian market. Now, if anyone's been to an Indian wedding, they tend to last several days, at the very least 4, sometimes up to 7. And the size that we're talking about is quite large. So what's considered an intimate wedding, for example, in India is about 200, 250 people. And these numbers go up and they can actually go into the thousands if they're local. But if it's a destination wedding, they still go up to about 800 people. And so you find that when Indians do these weddings, they will take out either one or several hotels in gorgeous destinations. Very popular amongst them are Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Thailand, Singapore, Italy, France, and the UK, and Spain as well, increasingly. Are all very, very big destinations for this market to have these beautiful weddings in. And they're very, very elaborate, massive food and drinks sort of spreads, lots and lots of entertainment, lots of drama, lots of acts, lots of glamour. So it's really quite fun because you'll have, things that don't necessarily happen in a lot of weddings where you recently had an elephant procession where the groom was on the top of an elephant, going down the streets of Venice, going to his bride. That's sort of how we do it. It's very normal to see that in India. But when you do it in Venice or you do it in somewhere else in the world, everybody comes out onto their balconies to watch. And it really does become something that the whole town can enjoy and participate in. So these are great fun. But the main thing is that they're huge business for hotels. And so this is something that, again, has become very competitive. People are really, really looking at the Indian market, trying to get these destination weddings to come in, because it means that you have a huge amount of business being generated there.
Thank you very much, Divya. And for a beautiful travel reportage, make sure to get a copy of Condé Nast Traveller. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can listen to the show again at monocle.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.